All right, we're counting down the teams, or looking at the teams that are chasing the Eagles in their pursuit for the Lombardi Trophy, and we're looking to this week at the teams from the South. Here to talk a little bit more football with us, 97.3 ESPN.com, and, of course, Johnny Mack here on the Boardwalk on the Hotline. He joins us now. What's going on, man?
Doing well. How are you guys?
We're doing okay today. It's all of a sudden got very steamy hot in here out of nowhere. just throwing that out there. I want to first
what happens when it's 100 degrees out.
Yes,
I guess
that's right. I think the AC on this side of the building decided that today was the perfect day to run out of gas. But hey, we'll continue on here on the show. We've been talking about the different teams chasing the Eagles. We got some interesting ones to dive into today. And since yesterday we didn't really get to them, we will have a couple of extra teams today. But the teams that we'll be talking about today are teams from the AFC and NFC South, which means let's start with Jacksonville here, John, because this is a team that at this time last year, I'm not sure we would have very high hopes for. But entering this year, the Jaguars a lot of people, think that could be a Super Bowl team.
Yeah, I mean, defensively, they're as talented as you get. So I think when you look at the Jaguars, the question is going to remain, how far can you go with Blake Bortles as your starting quarterback? And that's a legitimate question. But from the other side of the football, they're right there with one of the best defenses and arguably the most talented defense in this league, especially when you look at them up front and in the secondary. It's just playmakers all over the field, and you kind of know when you're that good defensively. Cliche in the NFL is defense always travels. So another one is you're generally going to be in games, and you're going to have a chance to win in a league that, by and large, is a one-score league from week to week. The Jaguars are going to be in a lot of games because of their defense.
Yeah, now there was some people who raised eyebrows when they went and brought Blake Bortles back. People really thought they were going to go looking for a quarterback in the offseason. Were you surprised they brought Bortles back, and was there maybe a more attractive option out there for him?
A little bit surprised because I had heard from when Tom Coughlin went back there that he wasn't totally sold on Blake Bortles, nor should he have been. But obviously he did improve at least to some degree last season. And I think the issue coming in was the turnovers, the mistakes, and he did curtail that dramatically. And I think Jacksonville's thought process was, A, how do you get better? Can you get significantly better? It's not easy to get a starting quarterback in this league. And then, B, can you win with this guy? They went pretty far last season. So I think their mentality is, let's manufacture wins. Let's do it that way. He's not going to be Drew Brees. He's not going to be Tom Brady. He's not going to be throwing the football all over the field. But can he be a game manager? And a lot of people look at that as a negative connotation, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. If you don't think you can find something that's better, what you want with a good defense is a guy that's not going to make mistakes. And they think Blake can be that guy. I'm not sure if I agree with it, but that's their thought process.
Yeah, and one thing they did do was bring in Andrew Norwell, who's an all-pro. I mean, sometimes offensive linemen don't get a lot of the headlines, but this is a team that does like to run the ball.
Yeah, because they can't throw it, and they can't really be explosive by stretching the football field. So you sort of take that old school mentality, and it becomes a run-first offense, and it becomes get the lead and let that defense take over, play from ahead, and as I said, don't make mistakes. And it might not be the sexiest way to win games, but it can win you a lot of games. I think from their standpoint, though, they've entered into a different stratosphere, and it's weird to say because Jacksonville has been down for so long. But because they're a playoff team last year, because they're going to have a top 5 defense, because they have Leonard Fournette, you start to ask yourself, well, why not us, especially on the AFC side when there's not a lot of competition like there is on the NFC side. And they should be asking that question. Why not us? Why not the Jaguars in the Super Bowl? And that's really a pretty significant step considering where they were for really the past decade.
Yeah. They lost Robinson in free agency, too. You talk about the pass game. So what kind of, weapons does this team have? Is this a team that just is going to be lacking too much on the offensive side of the ball, or are there a couple of guys that could surprise?
Well, yeah, I do think they're going to be lacking on the offensive side of the ball. I don't think they're going to be explosive. Their top receivers, really, Marquise Lee. They brought in Dante Moncrief, spent a lot of money on him, but he's not been really that effective. Certainly, he's got a lot of physical gifts. They brought in Austin Seferian-Jenkins at tight end. They had D.D. Westbrook. So those are the guys you're talking about, and that's not going to scare many defensive coordinators in this league, especially with Blake throwing the football. So it really does have to be an old school type of offensive mentality, and that's what Tom Coughlin is, really, and stay ahead of the chains, run the football early in the down set, and try to convert those 3rd and shorts, which is a lot easier than 3rd and 10, 3rd and 11, getting behind the chains. The bottom line is if Jacksonville is 3rd and 12, they're probably not going to convert. And that's not how they can win offensively. The good news is probably only going to have to score 20 points a game.
Yeah, John, you talk about top 5 defense. Is it a Super Bowl level defense, though, in Jacksonville?
I mean, unless you're Minnesota, I guess they can make an argument to have as much talent. But other than that, I mean, nobody's got more talent than the Jaguars on the defensive side of the football. And it comes from a number of reasons. They've done very well in free agency. They drafted at the top of the draft a lot. And they've got significant talent. Calais Campbell, Malik Jackson. It goes on and on. If you look at linebackers and Telvin Smith, and then they might have the most gifted secondary in this league from top to bottom. Jalen Ramsey might be the best cornerback. They have A.J. Bouye, who's certainly the best number 2 cornerback. He'd be a number 1 on the vast majority of teams. And then you have guys like Barry Church and Tayshaun Gibson, who are good players. I mean, they just have a ton of talent on the defensive side of the ball. So if you're saying, are they a Super Bowl level defense? Yeah, I mean, if anybody is, it has to be them because nobody else can bring that kind of talent to the table, as I said, with the possible exception of the Vikings.
Yeah, maybe their one question mark, too, John, could be Miles Jack moving to middle linebacker full-time.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at them, they're really strong up front, as I said, really strong in the secondary, and that linebacker, it's not tremendous. It doesn't jump off the page outside of Smith. So, yeah, if you are going to nitpick, that would be linebacker would be the position you would say they could probably improve some. But compared to everybody else, it's pretty good.
We're looking at the teams chasing the Eagles for the Lombardi Trophy today. Since we are off tomorrow, we're going to sneak 2 extra teams in. Jacksonville in the books. Let's go to New Orleans, a team that a lot of people, John, liked a lot at the end of last year. Maybe not at this time last year, but this is a team, when you have Drew Brees at the top running the quarterback position, that you're probably going to like somewhat, but 11-5. Do you think this Saints team is even better than they were a year ago?
It's interesting. Obviously, offensively, I mean, until you see some slippage from Drew Brees, they're going to be able to throw the football. They have been for top 5, really, passing offense. Whether they were up as an individual team or down, they've always been able to throw the football, and that starts with Drew Brees. He's one of the best pocket passers in the history of this game, which is interesting considering his size and the things he's had to overcome. But, yeah, I mean, they're going to be able to throw the football. We just talked about Jacksonville. They're the exact opposite. They put immense pressure on any defense because they can stretch the field. They can throw it. They can do everything as far as moving the football through the air, and it starts with Drew Brees. And, quietly, Michael Thomas, a lot of people don't talk about him, but he's one of those sort of long, lengthy receivers, big guy that is in vogue in the NFL and can dominate, especially with an accurate quarterback like Brees, because even when he's not getting separation, he's open because you have the back shoulder throws and things of that nature. So, yeah, they're going to be really, really good throwing the football as usual. And then I think with the Saints, you always talk about defensive issues. That has been the thing with them over the years. They improved tremendously last year. They got much better in the secondary. Started with Marshawn Lattimore, the hit, already one of the best cornerbacks in football. And now they've sort of tried to get that pass rusher. They thought that was the last piece of the puzzle, and they gave up a ton to get Marcus Davenport in the draft. I did not agree with that. I think it's a very raw player. I don't think he's going to be ready to hit the ground running in this league as a pass rusher. So I think they still have some issues there.
John McMullen with us. We're talking the Saints as we preview the teams that are chasing the Eagles. You brought up Michael Thomas. There's not a lot after you get past him, though, right, John? I mean, he's emerging as one of the NFL's elite receivers, 196 catches over the last 2 seasons, but then the drop-off is pretty quick. Ted Ginn Jr., Benjamin Watson, Cameron Meredith, and the guy they drafted, Traquan Smith.
Yeah, I mean, there aren't a lot of big names, and there aren't names that are going to scare you. Obviously, Ted Ginn can still run, can still get deep, and can still beat you that way. But that's where Drew comes in. I mean, he's one of those guys that makes receivers better, and they're always going to be better. And that's just it's going to be that way until you see him sort of father time catch up to him, and I've seen no evidence of that. So they don't have the most talented group after Michael Thomas. You're right, but he's going to make them better, and that's what he does. And don't forget about their ability out of the backfield as well. Right. You saw it last year with Alvin Kamara. Nobody uses backs out of the backfield better than Drew Brees. So that's part of the equation as well.
Yeah, it's like you can read my mind. Alvin Kamara is where I was going next, and the fact that Mark Ingram's got the 4-game suspension to start the season. How important is Alvin Kamara to their early success?
Well, he's important to their success throughout the season, and obviously he was tremendous as a rookie. I mean, it hurts because he's not the biggest back in the world. So you do want that complementary piece so you don't have to sort of run him down and give him too many touches, which if it happens early, maybe there's some issues late. So it is something to keep an eye on. But as you've seen today with July 4th looming, I think we've already had 3 suspensions from the NFL today. It's something every team's got to deal with, it seems.
John, one thing about the Saints that was unexpected last year was how good their defense was. There was a time late in the year where some people thought, they were right in the conversation with one of the better defenses in the league. Do you see that? Patrick Robinson, by the way, the Eagle, he left to go there. So do you think that the Saints are going to be up there defensively with some of these, Vikings, Jaguars?
Well, I don't think they're going to be up there with the Vikings and Jaguars, but they are, and I've been saying it for years with the Saints, and it happened. They don't need a top 5 defense with Drew Brees. All they needed was a competent defense. And when they were down and having the 7-9 Jeff Fisher-like season, they had historically bad defenses. They were always at the bottom of the league. And they made the incremental increase. And I thought it had a ton to do with Lattimore and the fact that they finally fixed things in the secondary. And they're only going to get better. You mentioned Patrick Robinson. Now they have one of the better nickel cornerbacks. And Marcus Williams was another rookie who performed very, very well until the playoffs last season. So they're much better on the back end. As I said, I still think they have issues in the front seven outside Cam Jordan, who's a very good player, and they tried to address the pass rush issue with Marcus Davenport. I think that's going to be a work in progress, but they're certainly at least middle of the pack, and that's all they need to be a contender.
All right, let's look at another team for the AFC South. We're counting down the teams that are chasing the Eagles. 2 teams a day. We're off tomorrow, so we're fitting a couple extra ones into today. How about Tennessee? You got Mariota now, who, a couple of years ago, people really wanted him to be the guy here with Chip Kelly. Where is he now in the league, at the quarterback position?
He's an average starter, and I think that's where he is. I mean, that's where he's going to be. I think, he regressed last year to most people. Part of it was the fact that I don't think, Tennessee ran that, they call it exotic smash mouth, and their running game wasn't nearly effective as the year prior. And he's the kind of guy that will be helped by a big-time running game. Derrick Henry takes over this year. DeMarco Murray's gone. They brought in Dion Lewis. So they have talent at the running back position, but I think they need to get that running game going to help Mariota. And it helps. They have one of the best offensive lines in football. So there's no reason they shouldn't be able to have a decent running game. But I don't think Marcus is an elite level quarterback. He's just sort of a guy. And when you have an average or slightly above average quarterback in this league, that means we talk about it all the time. Everything else has got to be clicking on all cylinders if you want to have that 11, 12-win season.
Does Marcus have weapons to throw to? They did draft guys.
Right. Does the light bulb go on for Corey Davis, for example? He was their 2017 first-round pick, and I don't know that they lived up to expectations, John.
No, he didn't. I mean, he's got tremendous physical gifts, but he had some injury issues, and people were concerned about that, and that sort of borne itself out. That's what happened. So you're looking at, I think it was the 5th overall pick. So they certainly didn't get what they expected of him, and the hope is he can stay healthy. And we mentioned Michael Thomas, very similar size-wise, 6'3" guy, lengthy, what everybody's looking for at the wide receiver position from a talent standpoint and a measurable standpoint, but he's got to stay healthy. And he's got to be a number one wide receiver. But until he does it, you can't assume he's going to do it.
How much of an X factor do you put on changing Malarkey and Robisky to Vrabel and LaFleur?
Well, I mean, it's always big. Anytime you make coaching changes, that's certainly a big part of it. And one of the reasons you have a regime change is the fact that Marcus Mariota did regress. And that's what happens in this league. And now the mentality is we're going to build this offense around him and tailor it to what he does best. And I think in a lot of ways that was unfair because I think that's what they tried to do. When I mentioned that exotic smash mouth, they were trying to take advantage of what he does best. I just don't necessarily think it's easy to do because it's not an elite quarterback. So I think that's unfortunate, but that's what happens in this league.
John McMullen's with us. They're an average defense, Tennessee?
Well, I mean, they have some talent, but yeah, I think if you look at them,
they seem like one of those teams that they seem like one of those teams a couple of years ago when they didn't have a very good team, that they were a gritty defense that kept them in games. But now that they're there, it seems like they're lacking defensively.
Well, I would say they're not bad. They're not great. I mean, they are mediocre.
Yeah, mediocre.
On that side of the ball.
They're an NBA purgatory, John.
And that's a problem. And that's maybe where Tennessee is, and sort of the NFL's version of purgatory. They're not a bad team. They're not a great team. They have, Jarrell Casey's a great player up front. They brought in Benny Logan, the former Eagle. They have one of the best safeties in football. They brought in Malcolm Butler. He should help, although obviously it didn't end well with him in New England. And then you have guys like Brian Arapko and Wesley Woodyard at linebacker. They're good players. They're not great players. But if you look at the NFL, I mean, everybody's got good players. You have difference makers. Yeah. I don't see, other than Casey, I don't see a ton of difference makers.
Real quick, just to do a couple quick breaking news with the Sixers. They've made a trade to acquire Wilson Chandler and a draft pick from Denver. So we'll get more on that coming up here in just a bit, but wanted to relay that message out there to the people that Sixers have traded for Wilson Chandler. It looks like per Woj, and a draft choice. We'll get more details on that. The last team today we're looking at in the South is Carolina. They're very interesting, John, because, when we think of them with Cam Newton, we think of that team that went to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. Are they closer to that team? They went back to the playoffs last year. They won the division. People were afraid of them. Where are the 2018 version of the Carolina Panthers?
Yeah, anybody who listens to me, reads me, knows I am not a fan of Norv Turner. And he's the offensive coordinator now. And I think if you could try and develop a plan to bring in the worst possible coach for Cam Newton, you'd come up with Norv Turner. I feel sorry for Cam. Everything he does well, and that makes him special, Norv Turner's not interested in. He's still running the 1992 Dallas Cowboys offense. Doesn't work in today's NFL. So I think the Panthers made a colossal mistake, and they're going to pay for it. They're not going to be a playoff team this year.
Yeah, and this is a team that has not been able to. They have not had great weapons. They got Torrey Smith. I don't know that helps out. They drafted Christian McCaffrey last year. Maybe he wasn't as dynamic or as big of an impact as people thought. But you look at them offensively, and then you add a very vanilla offensive coordinator in there. They're really going to be a tough offense to watch, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, Torrey should fit because the one thing he does well, stretch the field. That's what Norv wants to do. He wants to get vertical. He wants to run the football, but Christian McCaffrey is more, he did produce. It's just he wasn't as good as an Alvin Kamara in the same division. But he's a different type of back. He's a modern back. He's the three-down back. He's the guy you want to get the ball in space, not necessarily just running him like a tailback. And that, again, does not necessarily fit with what Norv Turner likes to do. So you might have a C.J. Anderson or somebody like that proving to be more impactful simply because he wants to hand it off. And look, I mean, Cam Newton is one of the best athletes to ever play that position, and you need to take advantage of some of the unique things he can do. And I've seen no evidence that Norv Turner is innovative enough to do that.
And then defensively, you look at Carolina, they've been very good defensively. Do they take a step back, though? This team's now 3 years removed from that Super Bowl team.
Yeah, I mean, they're really good. As long as Luke Kuechly's out there, as long as Thomas Davis is out there, they're going to be good. We talk about three-down linebackers in this league. and how important they are. And you can also throw Shaq Thompson into that mix as well. It's not like those two, but yeah, they'll be pretty good. That's not going to be the issue to me when you talk about the Carolina Panthers. I think the issues are going to be on the offensive side of the football, and we'll see how it shakes out.
All right, Johnny Mack with us here on the Sports Bash Live. We're counting down all the teams chasing the Eagles. A couple of teams from the South, AFC and NFC. Day off tomorrow, and we'll continue the countdown on Thursday and Friday. John, thanks, pal.
All right, thanks, guys.